I'm Kelly, and this is Kelly Hill Yoga. Welcome to part 2 of this little hip series that we are doing. I'm so excited for today. Today is all about yin. So, finding that other side of that vinyasa flow that we did with part 1, working on dynamic strength and stability in our hips. Today is about basically the complete opposite of that, and just finding stillness in our pose, positioning our body so we can work on that connective tissue, learning what our edge is in the poses. And as Bernie Clark says, we don't use our body to get into the pose. We use the pose to get into our body. So really take the time to internalize while we're here. We hold these poses from anywhere from about 3 to 5 minutes, just depending on the pose. When it's something a little bit more intricate, it's usually on the shorter side, just for safety and kind of like mind game as well too, because we don't want to stress ourselves too much. So today, lots of props. Not a bad word when we say modification. Yin is really about feeling supported in these poses, rather it is forcing our way to get there. So don't think aesthetics on how you look in the poses. We want this more to be about functionality. So we will start in a wide leg child's pose today. So let's take our knees nice and wide, toes, big toes together, and we'll walk our hands out in front of us. And this is where I'm going to give you a couple of options here. So blocks, blankets, bolsters is what I have today. If you don't have a bolster, it's totally okay. I know that can be super expensive. Just a good old-fashioned like couch cushion or something works really well. And then blanket, doesn't have to be a yoga blanket. It can honestly be just something that's off your couch as well. So find where you can feel nice and supported here. If you feel great being here with your head resting on your mat, arms out in front of you, please do. Maybe grab that blanket, have the head resting there. Or if you just have one of those days where you want to feel super supported, grab this bolster, place it in front of you, bring it right between the legs, and walk your chest to be on here and have your head set to the side. So, no matter which one of these you choose, you'll have the same benefit. So, forcing yourself to be somewhere, forcing yourself to be in that uncomfortable position really will work against you. So we want to be backed off from that edge. We're not forcing ourselves to be somewhere. So once you find that place, maybe even grabbing a block and having the forehead rest on a block, just find what feels good here. Find that stillness. And then we'll start to bring ourselves into this practice of yin itself. So when we stay here in these poses, really take the time to be here with you and your breath. Don't be having that laundry list or grocery list running through your head. I know it's harder to hold ourselves in these poses and just be with you and yourself, but it really is so beneficial to strengthening the mind, strengthening the body, and just getting there with that beautiful connection that you can have. So I'll stop talking, my apologies, and we'll rest our forehead on whatever you choose. If you have that bolster or that blanket or block or just good old-fashioned head on the mat, bring yourself into this space and do so with the breath. So I'll stay nice and quiet while we're holding these poses. I won't annoy you with too much talking. Silence can be powerful. Allow it to wash over you. Find comfort in it. Don't feel like you have to fill that space. You're more than welcome to have some music going on. I know something with lyrics sometimes I can find distracting, so maybe find just something gentle that doesn't have any lyrics to have any distraction, where you can just really be here and be present. And not pushing yourself to that edge. And know that sometimes when we first get into a pose, we're holding tension everywhere. Sometimes the longer we're here, we really find that release. Allow the benefit of the pose to happen. Let's slowly start to make our way out of this child's pose. Maybe take a nice deep breath. Gently walk our hands back towards as we come to rise up. Bring the knees nice and close together. And we'll just take a moment here. Palms rest in our lap as we sit back on our heels, eyes closed. Just take a moment here to reset before we move to the next pose. Awesome. And now let's come to sit. We're going to come into butterfly. And this is almost like a nice diamond shape. We're not doing this butterfly where our heels are super close. This is going to be really supported. So walk those heels nice and far away from the pelvis and find some support here. There are multiple ways we can do this. If you're super mobile and those knees are already resting on the ground, that's awesome. If you need some blocks underneath the knees to feel nice and supported, like I said, we don't want to feel like it's too much pulling. We want to be just backed off that edge. And when I say edge, it's just that little where your body's like, oh, too far. That's your body's way of saying that it's very close to injury. It prevents itself from injuring, which is so amazing about our bodies. How we all don't bow down to each other, I will never understand. But anyways, just come back off that edge. So blocks underneath, or maybe another variation. If you don't have blocks, you can also put pillows underneath. Another variation you can do is to roll your blanket up, and I'll show you really quick. Cross it over top of your feet and wrap it under the ankles. And you'll feel some awesome support here from your blanket. So lots of options. find some support. I just really like this blanket over the top of the feet. And then walk yourself forward, not crouching. So hinge at the hips here. You're more than welcome to have another blanket maybe underneath the hips to kind of lift you up too. Find somewhere to rest your head, whether it's on a block that might be resting on the feet, or you have your bolster or a pillow and you're just rocking and rolling. Normally, I like to really use a bolster, but I don't want it to mess with the sound on my microphone, so that's why I am not using that option today. I just want to be able to show you all some variations. So find this fold by hinging at the hips. Find somewhere to rest the head, and then just close the eyes and bring yourself in with the breath again. And the longer you're within a pose, as I talked about when we were in that child's pose, you might find a little bit more release. So if you start with your block on one level, and then maybe you'll find a tiny bit of release and then move it down. But it's not about moving levels, if that makes any sense. It's okay to have that support. And then play around with where you want your arms too. Sometimes bringing them up and underneath can be really awesome. But let your body get heavy. Use the breath to anchor you here in this moment. And once again, we'll be here for quite a few cycles of breath, a few minutes. Let's slowly start to come out of this. Gently make your way back up to seated. Always wanting to move nice and slow out of these postures when we've been here a little while. Set your props off to the side. Bring your hands behind you, and we're just going to slowly rock the knees from side to side, just to kind of counter pose what we just did. And now we're going to come into cow pose with our legs, or shoelace. Lots of variations here as well. So you can take your legs, we'll stack the left over the right first. Have our heels close to our hips or far away. You'll notice the further you walk them away, the more you'll feel this in your hips. Or if this is just way too much, you're more than welcome to do this on your back. And I will show you. Come onto your back, cross your left leg over the right. Lift the knees up and grab the ankles. Hanging out here by pulling those ankles out and towards you to wake up the hips. If this is still too much, come back to seated. Extend your right leg and just cross the left over the right. So lots of variations here. I'm going to choose the seated one. And whatever you choose, know that one way is not necessarily better than the other. So yin is just really finding that space to open up, not using our body to get into the pose, but using the pose to get into our body. Bernie Clark, one of the most amazing people behind the idea of yin. I highly recommend his books if you're interested to learn a little bit more about yin. So find somewhere here where you can have some comfort. So if this is enough just to be seated, maybe just bring your palms down or face up here, if this is enough. Or if you want to come a little bit deeper, not moving past any edges, maybe come to rest your forearms on a blanket, if this is enough. Palms up. You can also use some blocks here to have the forearms on some blocks, palms face up. Bolster can come into play. Maybe rest on the thighs and just hang out over. This is one of my favorite, but once again, I don't want to mess up the microphone. Or if you're a little bit more mobile in the hips, maybe come down to the forearms and let your head get heavy. So just pick and choose where you want to be at. And come to find that grounding place in both hips. Feel grounded. Use the breath to anchor you once again. Close the eyes. Slowly press our way back up to seated. Wherever you're at, if you were on your back, let's just unravel the legs, extend them in front of us and kind of shake them out, and then windshield wiper the feet here a little bit. And then we'll switch sides. So our left leg will be on the bottom now, our right leg is on top. Lots of options again here. So you might have really difference in one side to the other. So if you might have to take the back or that modified with the leg extended out in front of you, please do. That's listening to our body, knowing that we might be super tight on one side, not forcing something to happen. So, you're not as good as my left side. You have to be, I'm going to make myself uncomfortable in order to get there. Know that it's okay no matter where your body's at. We all have imbalances. I know I notoriously have my left side tighter than my right, so it's totally okay. Find that comfort again. Find that support, not moving past any edges. And make sure you let your head, wherever it's at, if it's supported by the ground, you have a nice long cervical spine, so maybe a gentle tuck of the chin. And if you're in this seated posture, let your head get really heavy. So let gravity do the work here instead of all those little ancillary muscles in the back of the neck. Let your head get heavy. Let's slowly press our way back up. Come out of this pose, set that blanket or prop or whatever you had off to the side. Unravel the legs slowly, maybe with some help from your arms. Extend the legs. Windshield wiper the feet. Back and forth, wiggle them out. And now let's make our way into straddle or wide leg. This is the one pose that is my absolute arch enemy. I have struggled with it just on that aesthetic level. I see all these beautiful things on social media and I get into my own head. So yes, I am a normal person thinking where my body should be. So I had a long time I really avoided this pose just because I have extremely limited hip mobility from being a runner all my life in that single plane. So for me, this pose used to cause a lot of stress. So I decided to incorporate it into my practices a lot more. I did so with Malasana, and I found to come to love that. So I'm hoping I have that same kind of success with this, working past those barriers and cycles. But anyways, to get aside from my own struggles, let's bring our legs nice and wide. And find somewhere, maybe moving that little meaty part of your booty off to the side so you're nice and grounded in your sit bones. And find where you can have a nice forward fold and feel supported. So play around with height of maybe blocks, blanket, or layering, having a blanket on top of blocks, or find that bolster or pillow from your sofa and have it nice and close to the belly and then fold forward, or if you need to stack it or have it nice and high, just resting here, you're more than welcome to. Lots of options here, or maybe even sitting on a blanket too to lift the hips up can be pretty awesome. In fact, I think I might do that today. So just come to sit on your blanket if this is the option you're wanting to rock and roll with. And then now I'm going to grab my blocks that my toddler has drawn all over and find this awesome fold here, resting my forehead on the blocks. And then try and keep this from hinging at the hips and not necessarily rounding through the spine. Just holding this for a few moments. Allow yourself to feel nice and grounded in your hips, but still keeping some awareness out to your toes. And slowly press our way back up. Use your hands to bring your knees in, lifting them up. Set your props off to the side. Maybe shake or windshield wiper your legs out. And then we'll come into our final pose. So if you do have a blanket here, I highly recommend it to have it underneath the knees. We're going to come into, as I move all this stuff out of the way, we're going to come into frog pose. So lots of variations here. This is the ultimate hip opener. So know that it's totally okay if you just have gentle widening in the hips. Bringing the toes together can be super helpful. So it's almost like that's very similar to the wide leg child's pose, but maybe being up on the forearms, toes together here, or rest. Once again, apologies if this messes with my microphone. Rest on your mat or this beautiful bolster here. Or if you want to turn the toes out for it to be a little bit more feeling in your hip, you're more than welcome to. And if it's too much to be nice and low down on the forearms, you can grab your blocks. Have the forearms on the blocks. If that's too much on your low back to have the forearms on your mat, just play around with what feels right. Not forcing anything. I'm going to choose the toes out variation today, but I'm going to walk my heels in a little bit. So they're not 90 degrees at the knees, 90 degrees at the hips. That's a little bit too intense in my hips. So I'm going to walk my heels in a little bit. I'm going to rest my forearms on my mat. And grab a block to rest my head on. So I'm not holding any tension in my neck, but I'm not dumping all my weight into this block either, if that makes any sense. So we'll hold this one for about 3 minutes. And really let yourself settle here. Use your breath to anchor. So if the mind starts to go to that grocery list, or if it starts to go to that judgment, that comparison that I talked about earlier, that aesthetic of, oh, I should look like this, or it should feel like this, I need to be doing this. Push all that aside. Be okay with where you're at. Let yourself go. Give yourself the freedom to let go. Beautiful word, freedom. The freedom to be in this moment, right? Very easy to do, to find comparisons in this social media driven world sometimes. But know that it's okay whoever you are. Show yourself some love, your true authentic self. My apologies if the rain plays through a little bit on the sound right now. It is pouring outside. And we have a metal roof, which is absolutely beautiful sounding with the rhythm of it, but if it plays through on the sound, kind of funny, my apologies. Let's slowly press our way up onto our hands. Walk your knees towards the center. Set all your props off to the side. Let's come to sit at our mat. Let's have our legs stacked or placed one in front of the other, so not crossed over. Maybe notice how nice and loosey-goosey your hips may feel right now. Probably have a big red mark on my forehead from resting it on that block. But let's bring our palms to face up and close the eyes as we close out this wonderful practice today. Let's take a moment here to really explore our inhale and exhale. So inhale, maybe bring some energy down to our hips. Notice how we feel. Exhale, release and let go. Thank you so much for being a part of this beautiful hip series that we did. If you have not found part 1 yet, that's totally okay. There's no specific order to how you're supposed to do this. And if you're only wanting to do one side of it, that's okay too. I just wanted anyone to have the option to explore that balance of dynamic vinyasa with one muscle group or joint or part of the body. And then to find stillness in that same body part. Just how you can play around with how it feels to be open through movement and open through that static, that stillness. So let's take a moment, bring our hands to our heart as we close out this practice today. Thank you so much for spending this time and space and energy with me today. It really is appreciated. I love all of your feedback, so please let me know. Maybe even tell me that one pose that might be your arch enemy, like I explored with you all today. So share it in the comments. Please do not forget to hit that like button on this video if you did. Hit the subscribe button, please, so you can be a part of Kelly Hill Yoga and this idea that self-love is never selfish. Thank you so much for being here today. As always, I love you.